Warm greetings from the High 10. It is Everyday Shenanigans. Thank you for joining me. Happy holidays to the viewing audience. The FBI estimates that there are between 25 and 50 active serial killers in the United States at any given time, and many of them have never been caught. Information dated September 26, 2022. Now for my commentary. Idaho student murders. Was a serial killer involved? Content uploaded 16 hours ago. Law and Crime Network is the source.
All right, welcome back to our live Q&A session right here on Law and Crime Trial Network as we take your questions about the Idaho murders investigation. I'm back with Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy, who's in Moscow, Idaho, outside of the police department. I'm also joined by former FBI Special Agent and Attorney Bobby Chacon. Great questions. Keep them coming on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. We're going to keep the conversation going. Bobby, I'll go to you. Here's an interesting question from Natalie Frazier on YouTube. Was the coroner interview premature? Wouldn't that have been bad for the investigation? Now, I believe what Natalie is referring to is the interview that Lata County Coroner Kathy Mabut gave with, I believe, NBC kind of early on in the investigation, talking about the extensive wounds, the time frame of when everybody was killed. Is that standard to speak out that early?
No, I don't think it is. And like I said earlier, my tone as an investigator was always to keep everything in as much as I could, not give interviews. This is a different world than when I was investigating. The drumbeat for information from this 24-hour news cycle and the internet wasn't present in the late 80s and early 90s when I was doing most of my investigations. But you generally want to keep as much information to inside the investigation as you can. You share a little bit with the families, a little bit, and you release anything that might be of strategic importance to the investigation. In other words, you release it to the public hoping for tips, or if you're watching a suspect, you can maybe watch them after you release the information and see if they behave in a different way. So I think that there's some strategic benefit, but in this case, no, I don't think it's advisable to put out that kind of information. You might share it with the families because there's an emotional need to know, but some of the wounds you don't want to share with the families. And so I think that, again, my default position is any information that goes out potentially could compromise the investigation. And unless it serves a strategic benefit to the investigation, it shouldn't be released. I think the police department might be feeling that right now. And Jeanette, want to go to you at Posh Penguin 3, which is great for multiple reasons. One, I hope that there was Posh Penguin 1 and Posh Penguin 2, and this user had to go to Posh Penguin 3. And that's how we like our penguins. Stylish, posh, perfect. So Posh Penguin 3 on Twitter says, was Ethan Chapin at the Betty Ball that night with his siblings? Was Zana with him? At what point did they make their way to the Sigma Chi fraternity?
Well, we know that they were at the Sigma Chi fraternity at around 9 p.m. On November 12th, that's Saturday night. Where they were in between 9 p.m. and 1:45 a.m., that's something we're trying to get the answers to. We talked yesterday, I met up with and just kind of ran into the president of Sigma Chi outside as he was going to class. And he just, didn't remark on their whereabouts for that night. He said everything they know they've shared with the FBI, Moscow police, and the Idaho State Police, and that they've cooperated with the investigation. But we know that Moscow police, as of Monday, didn't know where they were between those hours because they're trying to put that timeline together. So I don't know if Ethan was at that event with his siblings or not. Ethan is a triplet, and his other siblings, his two siblings, surviving siblings, attend the University of Idaho as well. So I know police are looking into that. That's a question we have for them, and we're going to try to get the answer to that question too.
I know you're on it, Anjanette, and we have more questions actually directed specifically towards you in 1 second. Before we do, Bobby, I want to go to you. We have a question from one of our Twitter followers at TrialWatcher22. Could this have been a serial killer just passing through and is long gone, or is that unlikely? It's unlikely. And I've spoken to some of my former colleagues that I work with now almost on a daily basis who are former FBI profilers. Serial killers usually have a signature
They don't usually kill more than one person at a time, although it has happened. It's unusual. And this is not the type of crime that we usually see, the victimology of which, serial killers usually have a specific type of victim and a specific, some have a ritual they go through when they do the killings. And none of that is here. These are multiple victims, seemingly random. I think that probably, in my opinion, one of these people was the targeted victim and the other was collateral. The other three were collateral. But it doesn't seem to me like a serial killer. Serial killers, because the way they get away with it for so long, are usually much more careful. And this killer didn't seem to be careful. I think, entering a house with 6 people in it is not careful. Now, they did get away. I grant you that, but it's not generally a safe way to do it.
Okay, so I have, like I said, Anjanette, we have questions directed specifically towards you. Sorry, Bobby, no offense. This is from Drew Cohen on YouTube. Please ask Anjanette about a camera at 1320 Linda Lane, Moscow, Idaho, right by the house, facing Taylor Avenue, the main road in that neighborhood that connects King Road to the main road. You know anything about that, Anjanette?
I don't, but I feel like I'm going to have to go look into that.
Yeah, right.
I think I need you to text that address to me and all of that information. So no, I don't. But we've been keeping an eye out for video cameras, and also, they've been putting out a call for surveillance footage. They've asked people within a certain radius to submit all of their surveillance footage. So. We know they've gotten a lot of video and digital evidence uploaded to that FBI website, but I think we'll have to go look into that camera that was mentioned by that questioner, that viewer, here a little later today.
I wonder if that's somebody who's actually from the area. Look, sometimes investigators need the public's help. They know details. They know things that other people will not know. I go to you, Bobby, from Sultan Sheikh on YouTube. We talked about this earlier, but I was wondering whether the father hiring a private investigator, we talked about the lawyer, whether hiring a private investigator will impact the case. Now, what we know from Mr. Gonsalves is he wouldn't reveal the identity of who this person is, but it seems to be somebody who's former law enforcement, had much experience, had a very high clearance rate. Hiring a private investigator, how's that going to impact the case?
Well, hopefully it doesn't impact the case, and hopefully that private investigator coordinates all of his efforts or her efforts with the investigative team. The danger, of course, is that they go out and re-interview witnesses that have already been interviewed, and later on, if there's a grand jury and a person gives multiple statements, and sometimes they seemingly might conflict with their prior statements, that can be used against them, particularly at trial. So I was never in favor of a parallel investigation. However, if they are doing it, they have the right to do it. I understand that. I would hope that they're coordinating all their efforts with the investigative team, because that's important. Because if you're not coordinating, mistakes can be made, and it could hurt the investigation.
Anjanette, I'm going to throw 2 questions out to you. One is from Sierra Edwards on YouTube. Have they confirmed how the killer made entry into the home? And the second question is from Rachel Henderson from YouTube. Are the police 100% sure there was only one killer? So much carnage by just one killer. Bobby and I talked about the likelihood of multiple killers, but what has actually been confirmed in terms about the entry point and the number of assailants?
We don't have it a lot confirmed on an actual entry point. As I mentioned, there was a lot of attention being paid to that sliding glass door that leads to the second floor of the home. We are going to see if maybe that was the entry point. It seems most likely, based on just how the house is laid out and how it looks. I think it would take a lot to get up to the balcony on the 3rd floor. So, and this is a house, from what we've seen on TikTok and stuff like that, from some of the videos, that it looks like it has, one staircase that goes up to the 2nd floor possibly, and then there's another smaller staircase, set of stairs. So this is a split level house. There's 3 different levels. So we are going to look into that, the entry point question, as well as other questions about whether or not they believe there's more than one person involved. It seems to me, and I agree with Bobby, just based on what we know, that it likely probably is one person and one person only.
Bobby, just to go off of another question that we keep seeing a lot is in terms of the target, right? We know the police went back and forth about where the individuals in the house targeted were, and why just those 4 individuals that were killed and not the other 2 people that were on the ground floor, or whether or not the house was targeted. Was there something about the house? Where do you stand on what we know so far on whether or not it was the house or the specific people who were targeted?
Well, yeah, so in homicide school, they taught us a Venn diagram, which for those who don't know is 2 circles that are overlap with each other. One is the location of the homicide, and your suspect pool comes from all the people that might be associated with the location of the homicide, and then the victim is the second circle, and where they overlap, where those 2 circles, all the people that are in that victim's life, and so where those 2 intersect or overlap is where your likely suspect is going to come. So I think that in this particular situation, I don't think it was the house. I think this was because of the brutality of the murders, and because 2 of the people in the house were left as survivors. I think that the killer was going. And my understanding is there were only 2 rooms, 2 people in one room, 2 people in the other. Victim. And so I think that they may have chosen the wrong room initially, killed the people that were in there, and then moved on to the second room where they found their intended victim. Once they found that intended victim, then they departed the resident.
So, Bobby, sorry to cut you off. Thank you so much for your analysis and breakdown of this. And Jeanette, thank you so much for reporting on the ground. Stay safe. And everyone out there, thank you so much for your questions. We'll be right back.
All right, everybody. Law and crime is the source of this information. I'm going to recap what was said pertaining to this information. As I told you at the beginning of this live stream, it is estimated from the FBI that 25 to 50 persons are operating as serial killers in the United States, and most have not been apprehended. As far as the release of the coroner's report, was it too early? Some things perhaps mentioned to the family could have been mentioned, but not the severity of the wounds. But that doesn't really mean anything, because naturally the people who would be asking, such as the family, any questions of the coroner, they would have access to the body thereafter, so they could use their own deduction pertaining to the severity of the wounds. As you've heard from Mr. Gonsalves pertaining to his daughter, Kaylee, I do believe he's implicating that maybe she was the target. But I don't think in this commentary it was best to release information too soon by the coroner. And we do know that the coroner was not a professional in that craft. It was a nurse, allegedly. Someone asked about Ethan and some event, if he had went to the event. So far, there's no new information of him attending any events besides going to this frat party. What I'm curious to know is, how do these other siblings feel about the death of their brother and girlfriend and other friends? Are they still going to continue going to the university? Because this has to be very hard on them. They were triplets, so naturally they shared a womb with one another. 3 babies shared a womb. So they would have a bond, you would think. So now there's -1. So how does this brother and sister feel now minus a brother? Will they continue to go to school? Are they still in the school? And what are their future plans? Do they have any idea of who the killer could be? And who do they think the target was? As far as a serial killer being the culprit, the fact that there were several people killed at one time, this ex-law official feels he doesn't see that. He feels that serial killers pick a specific type. They usually have a ritual. He does not see this here. He believes it was 1 target and 3 collateral victims. He says the killer was not careful, although he did get away. But he feels like the way he went about it was not the safe way, generally not the safe way to do it. Someone mentioned something about a 1320 Linden Avenue or street pertaining to a camera. The commentary said possibly this is someone that lives in the general area. So whose house is this, and why are you mentioning this person's house? because I'm sure there are many people who have doorbell cameras. So why put this person on Front Street? Once again, you are now implicating someone's full address. All it's going to take is for somebody to go Google this address, see if they can get a valid name. And then here comes the doxing and the stalking of this person. I don't know if it's a male, female, a home with kids, students, single person. But why put this address out there? Because all you need is as I said, some wacko sicko decides to start hanging outside this house, watching these people and harassing them or asking them, do they know of anything? And they don't know of anything. And I won't be surprised if it's a YouTuber or an internet junkie who has put this person's name on blast, or possibly a resident in that general area. But somebody has decided to play around with Google Earth or walk around the neighborhood trying to decide who has surveillance cameras or not. And I would hate to see this person become a new target in this investigation, because putting their address out there is very messy, and it's really disrespectful to put their address out there. But that's expected, I see, with true crime in general. People just cannot stop meddling in things that don't concern them. And there's no empathy for people, period. So now you're deciding, well, I'll just throw their address out there and say, hey, did the cops go talk to this person at this house? I mean, you just pick a random house and throw their address out there. This is becoming an epidemic, I see, as they say, in this true crime community. And I don't believe in doing that, putting someone's house out there on blast, their address. Most of you know Mr. Gonsalves has been a very vocal person in this investigation pertaining to the death of his child. And he has decided to hire a PI. I do not know if he has officially hired someone, but it was asked, how will it impact the case? This person giving commentary says he hopes it doesn't impact it. And if so, this PI coordinates with the detectives working the case. Also go back to the previous witnesses, prior witnesses, and talk to them to perhaps get information from them. And then see, too, my own opinion, if it will correspond with what was given to the police. But that's the thing. Will the police work with the PI? Will they tell them anything that they've learned in this case? Because if he's talking to people and they give different versions of what they gave the police, how are you going to be able to compare the two? This is why I feel like the parents should have talked to the girls at the house and talked to anybody that was close proximity to the kids, such as other good friends and other friends that came to the house. But would they have told them the truth if they talked to the parents? I don't know. Their actual relationships. He also says he doesn't recommend a parallel investigation. It could harm the investigation. And naturally, that means going to get other outsiders to take a look at this investigation, such as a private investigator. You already have enough people who will possibly bump heads: state police, Moscow Police Department, and the FBI. You got enough heads bumping already. Now you go get a private eye. How is that going to work? Entry was asked. Has an entry been confirmed? The reporter says not a lot. And as I said, imagine if they had gone through the front door. I was looking at some things on social media last night where somebody in a chat said, it was off of a Facebook group or something, somewhere I was reading, where they said somebody walked by at 8:30 and saw a door open. Now that's, he said, she said, naturally no confirmation. I haven't even heard that a door was left open, a front door. And I'm not banking on that, because somebody would have to show video of the front door being open at that time. So the best person to ask would be the neighbors that sit to the left side of the house, because I believe there are two houses to the left. Those will be the people to ask. Did you notice the door open at 8:30 a.m.? Also, confirmation of one killer or more. This gentleman says he believes there's, and the reporter believes there's one killer. Likely only one killer. So, is this the work of a serial killer? I don't know. Target. House of target, or the kids, or one of the kids? This official says in his commentary that when they go to school and they're studying law enforcement, that they have a circle, a diagram, and they work their way in this circle, such as location of the scene, the people associated with the victim, and the victims. And this is how they will build their investigation to finding the culprit. The man speaking in his commentary says he does not believe the house was the target because there were 2 survivors. Perhaps the perpetrator went in the wrong room. That's very interesting. Went in the wrong room, killed those people, found his targets, killed them, the intended target, and then left. Now, you're entitled to your interpretation of what happened in that house. 3 levels, allegedly 5 roommates, 2 survived and 3 died, and 1 visitor. That's Mr. Ethan Chapin. He died, the boyfriend of Miss Xana. Don't believe the 3rd floor was the entry point, but we don't know because rumors of the 2nd door being opened on occasion by the girls, left open. Somebody has to verify that the girls constantly or occasionally left the 2nd floor entry open. Also, you have to ask yourself about the front door. Does it automatically lock itself when you shut it? And with it being a keypad, most people, I think those doors would automatically lock on their own. So I wouldn't see that door being accessible for the killer to get in unless he or she had the code. Thank you very much for the super chat. So how did the killer enter in? So if the killer didn't enter in the front door, a window, that leads to 2 glass door entries, 1 on the 2nd floor, 1 on the 3rd. If the 2nd floor wasn't open, then that means the perpetrator would have had to crawl up to the 3rd floor landing. And many people do not talk about that in their commentary, that perhaps the killer entered in on the 3rd floor by crawling up from the ground and crawling over the rail. And there are people who have scaled balconies before, way higher than this house in the back, because they're not that far apart, the 3rd and the 2nd floor. So did the killer enter through the 3rd floor? Couldn't get through the 2nd door, but climbed up the pillar and entered into Maddie's room, or whomever's room that is up there with the balcony. Very interesting information. Once again, 25 to 50 working serial killers in the United States, and most have not been apprehended. That is the set information. Law and Crime Network is the source. I just uploaded a video pertaining to Billie Joe Howell and her daughter, Leilani Simon. I decided to address the issue of her being on lockdown for suicide watch and Billie Joe Howell seeking to get the venue moved for the trial, but she has no jurisdiction in that. That will be up to the attorney representing Leilani Simon. Please check the library for that uploaded content. And then last night I made a live stream pertaining to, is this a planned attack or not? I want to thank you for your time. God bless all of you. Please have a prosperous week. And this is Everyday Shenanigans. Thank you very much.